What's going on, everyone? Seth Miranda here for Adorama TV. Here again at Nikon headquarters with our Cruz over here, who's got his new shoes. He's very proud of that. Changed them before we got started. It was kind of astounding. Sir. But we got some pretty big news going on here. You have a twin release Z6 II, Z7 II. This is the second generation of the Z series, which debuted 2 years ago. 2. Congratulations, first of all. This is a pretty big moment for you guys, I think.
It is a very big day. We're entering the second chapter, the next chapter, next generation of our Z cameras. And over the last couple of months, we've had a lot of big announcements, but this one is the big one. Today, we're announcing the next generation of Z6 and Z7 with the Z6 II and Z7 II, among other things, which we'll get into.
I'm just going to go right into it. I mean, it's like kind of like the elephant, but twin release, twin card slots.
That's right.
We have XQD CF Express as one card slot, and the other one is SD UHS 2.
That's right. So we got the fastest cards on the market in both of these cameras. We've been listening to our professional community, and a lot of them have been asking for that feature. Since we came out with the Z6 and Z7, it's attracted a lot of the professional community, but they need that redundancy and that peace of mind to have that secondary card slot. So we did add in and kept the form factor the same. So we were able to keep the form factor the same and squeeze in that second card slot.
Yeah, and the benefits of having SD, and you know, everyone wants to have like matching card slots, but there's also a benefit to the SD. One, lower cost cards, more options out there. Card readers are more affordable, things like that. If you already have an SD card reader, you have to go out and get another card reader or whatever. But either way, it was just finally, right? Like you answered all the concerns that were happening with the original Z with the card slot.
That's one of the concerns or the things that we have to address, that we have to do hardware-wise. A lot of the things that we can address, we've done software-wise through firmware updates, but with this generation now, we really have to address the hardware upgrades, and that's why we're coming out with these new bodies that have the dual card slots.
Yeah, well, not just dual card slots, dual processors, and this is like a new thing. We don't hear that all the time. You hear about like the new processor, but this is XP 6 twice over.
That's right, and that's another hardware upgrade, and that hardware upgrade gives us a buffer capacity that, even though it's two processors in there, it's over 3 times the buffer capacity of both of these cameras. Again, the professional community is what we're looking at here, people that are taking burst, high burst, continuous extended. On the Z7 II, we now have a high burst rate of 10 frames per second. That's up a frame per second from the first generation. And now we're up to 14 frames per second on the Z6 II. How did I end up with the Z6 II and you got the Z7 II there?
Well, I got to play with that one for a little bit. Then I had to take the Z7 II because I feel like they're while they're similar body styles, and well, they are the same body style. And usually people just think like, oh, this one's the high res and this one is like medium res, and you know, this will be low light. Like there's actually a good differentiation between the two. We're gonna get into that a little bit. Let's go over like the major differences. And the one other big difference is we have a battery grip here, but it's more than just a battery grip, it's a vertical grip. We have the buttons, we have the joystick, we have the dials, on, off, everything. It's actually collecting data from the camera. It's able to talk back and forth to the camera.
That's important. So when we initially came out with Generation 1, Z6 and Z7, we had an MB-N10 battery pack. Now this is a functional grip. This is the MB-N11. And people have been asking for the shutter release, controls for shutter speed, aperture. We even have a function button there that can be programmed to do a myriad of things, start your video among them. A joystick on the back as well. It's hot swappable. So there are two batteries that you can put in there. Thank you for holding up that tray so people can see it. You can put 2 batteries in there. The one that's closest to the door can actually be removed in real time and not interrupt the operation of the camera. So if you're doing long video production or if you're doing streaming or whatever and you don't want to interrupt, you can pull out the battery from closest to the door, put a fresh one in there, and it won't interrupt because it'll automatically switch to the other battery.
Yeah, and you really thought out power in this case. You brought up streaming, and one of the things with streaming is AC power. You can actually power these through USB-C, which is great, but also, which I don't think you guys even realize, is when you're tethering in a studio like I do all the time, you never have to change the battery ever because you're constantly connected to a computer. It's running power to this from the USB-C port. Plus, you got the 2 batteries. Like, you're never not having a camera power it up for you.
Yeah, the power options on these are our best implementation yet. So first of all, it's a new battery. It's an ENEL 15C battery, same as on the Z5. It gives us more shots significantly from generation 1. We have up to, I believe, 450 shots now per charge, up to 100 minutes of video. So that's, you know, over an hour and a half. That's like an hour and 40 minutes of video approximately on one battery. But as you said, with the USB-C charging, we call it USB-C power delivery. So it's essentially, like you said, it is running the camera while it is turned on, and you can essentially run indefinitely. Good news is it's backwards compatible with some of the older ENEL 15 batteries. So if you have existing Nikon DSLRs and it has the ENEL 15 A, B, C, or even the original one, you can use it in these cameras as well, and you can use it with USB power delivery. Which is
a huge, that's a big deal. Especially if you're, so when you're getting into a system, if you're someone that's been using Nikon forever, you don't have to worry about buying another bunch of batteries to cover yourself. You probably already have enough to take with you to this next generation, or what you guys are calling the next chapter of the Z series.
That's right.
But we just touched on video, and I think that's where we have to go next. So what are we talking about? Resolutions, frame rates, all that stuff. We got 4K in both?
Yes, so the big upgrade in these ones is not only is it 4K in both, but the introduction of 4K 60.
Bingo.
So that is an important upgrade that we're addressing with our users that have wanted that feature. In the Z7, it's there out of the gates. However, with the Z7 II, with the Z6 II, it'll be available as a free firmware update in a couple of months, February of next year.
Yeah, which is basically like right out of the gate anyway. And that just also is a testament to Nikon's firmware updates. I mean, we've seen the Z6 go to firmware 3.1 and be almost a completely different camera with the performance level that's coming out of it, with free firmware updates that you guys just giving out to optimize what people already have in their hands.
Right. And I will address, probably because people are going to be asking in the comments, what is the crop in there for 4K 60 in the Z7 II. That'll be almost full frame, so it's about 93% of the frame. With the Z6 II, the 4K 60p feature will be at like a Super 35, but it's the DX crop.
Yeah, which isn't that crazy of a thing, as a lot of people shoot video at Super 35. It's really just a matter of the crop of the lens, not so much a drop of resolution or something crazy like
4K.
that.
Yeah, that's right.
It's exactly. So the video's there. We're talking about 8-bit?
Yes, so it'll be internal. Yes, internal to the memory card. There will be options for 10-bit out, and that will give us options to do things like N-Log, okay, as well as now we have HLG out through the HDMI cable. So that's a new feature in this. And in addition to that, for the professional and video community that wants to shoot in 12-bit RAW, we offered that in our first generation of Z cameras as a firmware update to make it compatible with ProRes RAW. Now we also have compatibility, or we will in a few months, for Blackmagic RAW as well. So that will be an optional paid firmware update for both cameras, but that will be inclusive of both the ProRes RAW as well as the Blackmagic RAW.
Yeah, a lot of flexibility. Yeah, a lot of options, a lot of flexibility there in video, which is kind of amazing, because like I think the Z6 was like your Nikon's real hard throw at video in the beginning, because we never really had Nikon in the video space so much until I think like the Z6 debuted, and people were like, oh, there's an option in Nikon to do some serious video with it, and it got adopted pretty quickly. That being said, is the Z6 and Z7 being discontinued, or that's still going to be an option out there?
No, actually, when we came out with this, let's rewind 2 years ago, we had 2 bodies, 3 lenses, 1 adapter. Today, we will have 6 bodies, including the Z50. In our lineup. So the Z6 and Z7 remain in the lineup. People will just have to look at the features and see if the Z7 to Z6 to it makes more sense, given the features that it has: boost in buffer capacity, boost in frame rates, and some other features that we'll talk about here, is 4K 60 and whatnot. So those remain in the lineup. But today we have a strong lineup of bodies, but also a strong lineup of lenses. So that'll be about, today we have 16 lenses in the lineups, 2 teleconverters, and 8, we're going to have 8 more next year. So by the end of 2021, we have a strong story, compelling story for the Z series with 24 lenses in the lineup. And that addresses everything from wide angle, primes in between, fast primes, super fast primes with the 50mm 1.2 and the 2.8 Trinity that we have here that we completed last month. 14 to 24, 24 to 70, and 70 to 200, all 2.8, all S-line.
Yeah, I think it's, first of all, people don't realize that's only been 2 years. Like, this has been fleshed out pretty quickly. I don't think people have, like, ever looked at a system as a whole sometimes, and I think that's one thing that, it's a platform now. Like, there's a whole Z platform. It's not, hey, we made a camera, or hey, there's some lenses for it. Like, no, it's actually coming together. Before we get all crazy on the platform, I am going to jump into autofocus.
Let's do it.
So that's one thing that I feel like you've been improving every firmware update. And in here, one of the cool things I found as soon as we picked up, I clicked the eye menu, and the eye menu had a new box in it, and it was in the autofocus. I'm able to select from that the eye menu, face detection, not just on all, what do you call it, like the total frame, the wide?
Yeah, auto area AF, I think is what you're talking about, yes.
Right.
So that's the full frame that it's taking.
And I stayed away from always putting that on because I don't want the camera to make that many decisions for me, especially if there's multiple people in a shot. But now you have it in more of a limited frame. You can actually pick just area from the eye menu in split seconds, change it to grab just like if you have a picture, if you have a frame of 3 people, drag that larger box around the frame to wherever you want it, and they'll keep grabbing the eye of that person. So let's say I'm shooting a politician, and they're around a lot of people. I can always make sure that one large box is just on that politician as they're tracking him.
That's exactly the way you described it, is exactly the way it works. So the feature is the wide area AF mode, and now we've merged this to have that work in conjunction with face and eye detect. I will also mention that it also works in video as well. So
yeah.
eye detect is a big upgrade in this generation of cameras because we didn't have that in Gen 1. Now we have it with these cameras. But that feature that you mentioned there, the wide area AF with face and eye detection, also works now for humans or people and animals as well.
Yeah, there's a little cat face.
That's right.
It's
yes,
adorable.
yes, yes.
Very adorable. That's very adorable. Yeah, no, I think a lot of the things that are coming to fruition in these next bodies are straight out of feedback. I mean, you literally listen to everything that was out there, and you're like, okay, 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 including, I think we were talking about less blackout in EVF.
That's right. When you're taking continuous high-speed shots, what's going to happen here is that you'll see the live view image for a little bit longer than you would in the first generation. We've done that through a sequencing upgrade. So all those little things that we're addressing to make this a good experience, especially for people that are coming from an OVF system and they're used to that quick blackout time on a DSLR. We're closing the gap, starting to close the gap with every little bit of the upgrades that we're doing in these cameras.
Yeah, I mean, it's a young system, but I do appreciate that you right out of the gate, you have a great form factor, the ergonomics, all that stuff. And if you're familiar with one, you're familiar with basically all of them. The same menus from the DSLRs are still in the Z, very navigatable, the question mark button. Yes. That I think is super important for people that are not really sure about the cameras.
All those things is what kind of makes our system, you know, people say feel like a Nikon, and it is really the Nikon experience. I mean, it comes down to the feel of the camera in your hand. It's kind of a very personal thing. It's hard to quantify. It's something that you got to really experience for yourself. And, you know, a lot of people say that they like the system, and it's something that we pay a lot of attention to, how far the viewfinder sticks out, where these buttons and dials go, the angle of them and things like that.
Your space of your fingers to the lens.
That's it. All those things are of utmost importance. We can talk specs all day, but those things I think make the experience a truly Nikon experience. Well, so yeah.
Yeah, but I think people have to get in their hands, right? So I think that's kind of what's going to be happening now that we have these cameras from 2 years ago that are still going to be out there as an option, maybe at a lower cost than what we have here in our hands right now. So every price point will have something that someone could gravitate to that's affordable and gives them all that Nikon power. I mean, one of the things that Nikon's always done was like, people say was like it's backwards, like the focusing ring goes another way than some people are used to, but you just told me that pretty much you can adjust that.
That's another video upgrade. Among the 4K 60 eye focusing in video, we now have an option here to reverse the direction of the manual focus ring. Exactly. So, you know, this is something only possible on the Z series because we're using these fly-by-wire lenses. So it's basically an option in the menu that you can go, and if you have muscle memory from using other cine lenses or other lenses from other manufacturers, focusing in one way, it was very hard for people to come to our lenses and literally go the other way because of the muscle memory. Now you can flip a menu switch and do it the other direction.
Yeah, and that's just a testament more to Nikon's focusing on these details that they're hearing. You know what I mean? Like, it just shows that you're getting your finger on the pulse more and more and more as this system gets evolved. And again, this is going to be firmware 1.0 when it's out. We're at 3.1 on the original Z6, and people say it's a whole nother camera. Who knows where this could go? You guys keep on focusing on what can we give the people that already have the cameras in hand more.
It's been a rapid expansion since we come out with this line, but it's also been a rapid expansion in listening to the feedback and even getting updates in there in almost real time. So
yeah. Oh, those comments will let you know. Yeah. No problem about that. I mean, I'm pretty excited about this, especially with all the power options on here. I've always really enjoyed cameras that while I'm tethering are powered. I don't have to even think about, oh, do I have another battery on the charger while I'm already working and all this craziness.
Yeah, there are a lot of power options, especially when you talk about people like yourself that do streaming and things like that. The USB power delivery is really important. People that do time-lapse as well. So if they need to power their camera for a long period of time, and they can use something like an NIKKOR power bank to shoot all night, we now have upgraded time-lapse features that you can shoot both interval timer and time-lapse at the same time. We also have long exposure options now in these new cameras that can shoot up to 900 seconds, which is 15 minutes uninterrupted. So we have a lot of those features there that people don't necessarily know about, but are powerful professional features that people that do those type of photography would really appreciate.
Yeah, and we've been touching on the live streaming thing. Webcam utility that Nikon put out, which means I can plug a Nikon Z into.
Quietly.
Yeah, you guys let that out, right? So
it's in beta form right now.
It's beta form, but look, I'm using it. It works. I mean, I have a video where I use the Z5 straight out of USB with power and video coming out of it. Just out of the USB, no HDMI, no AC power adapter needed. Like, you save $300 out of the box just streaming. With this, you can plug this USB-C from the camera to a laptop, to a computer, and you can run video signal out of it, be a discoverable device, and now it's available for Mac. It was only PC before. In fact, my video is on PC, believe it or not. So
and power it
and power
well.
It, right? Yeah.
So one cable does everything. Like prior to that, I was literally using maybe like a dummy battery to power the camera, or and an HDMI cable in there as well. Now you can actually consolidate that into one with the USB. As you said, it'll be detectable, and we have it for Mac and PC now as well.
Yeah, and that's huge. So
in beta form, yeah.
Out of the box, you're streaming. There's no dongle, no. I mean, you're easily into $200-300 investment in accessories just to get cameras to live stream. They weren't meant for that forever. They were just kind of like, yeah, I could do it. But now you're paying attention to that, and that's a key thing, especially where we're at right now.
Yes, especially right now. So among the other big advancements in this, the autofocusing systems are also different on these as well.
Yeah.
So the Z7 II has a 493-point autofocusing system. The Z6 II has a 273-point autofocusing system. So there's more autofocus points because of the higher resolution of the Z7 II, which is a 45 megapixel versus a 24 megapixel. Another differentiating point in these two cameras is the sensor. It has no optical low pass filter on the Z7 II, so it's kind of like a medium format feel to it, very, very sharp, among other things, yeah.
Yeah, this is a very detail-oriented machine, a lot of studio work, things like that. You need to see all those fibers or yarn in the fashion, jewelry, all that type of stuff. Z6, you're more versatile, you're out. You can do lower light capability with, let's talk about that. You actually boost up the autofocus and lower light. We're really glossing over that.
That's a very important feature, and it's something that, again, pros need. What it is we can focus now at, in the case of the Z6 II, down to negative 4.5 EV, which is a full stop better than the previous version, and down to negative 3 EV on the Z7 II, which was another full stop over the previous version. So what we can claim is that we can essentially focus in half the amount of light as we did in the past, almost in pitch black. So it's getting much better. That's a significant improvement when working in low light dim situations, studio even, when you're just modeling lights, or even a dim banquet hall and things like that.
Yeah, even just shadows, contrasty light. I mean, things like that happen, and it also adds the ability to track better, detect eyes better, all that type of stuff. People think it's just like one aspect, but there's so much that goes to autofocus, from detection, distance, phase detect. I mean, you could go down a tree of what goes into autofocus, and if it can work in lower light, it'll work in normal light even better.
That's right. Since we're talking about light, I mean, I'm just going to take that opportunity, if you don't mind, to just talk about flash and the fact that we also today announced a new adapter. So this is the WRR11B You left that for me to say.
Yeah.
You just wanted to call it an adapter. But essentially what this does, it plugs into the accessory terminal at the side of the camera, and it can do a plethora of things. It can remote control your SB5000 via radio. So this is a radio trigger. And the benefit of this, even though we have such a really robust CLS system that's based on infrared, is that with the radio system you can penetrate barriers, you can shoot at farther distances, and you can even remote control several cameras so long as each one has this. You can actually have a commander remote type of relationship between cameras. So if you have a setup with, you know, a B camera or a C camera and they're set up on tripods, they'll fire at the same time as the master or the main camera, the commander camera.
Which is huge for like sports, right? You know, if you're someone that shoots like boxing or whatever, you'll be ringside, but you have a remote camera up in the rafters, wherever. You're able to know when you're firing that camera instead of having these intervals that might be grabbing something or whatever. There's just more control. I mean, the CLS system is like legendary. It's been around forever. That was line of sight. What he's basically holding there is radio, which means that you don't need line of sight. I can put speed lights behind walls, wherever. It's a dedicated radio trigger system, so you need a third-party trigger system for speed lights anymore.
And one thing else that I did want to mention about this is that you can use it as a tally light if you're actually shooting video with it. It goes on. But if you're shooting video and each one of your cameras have this, you can actually remote start all the cameras at the same time.
Sync.
By assigning the shutter release to start the video. And now we have a trigger, the WR-T10, that you can actually start all these cameras. Right now we have a 3-camera setup.
Yeah.
If all of them had this installed, we could have a trigger and just set them up instead of having press, press, press.
That's awesome, especially just to sync up and just make everything easier
Exactly.
on you in editing.
Yeah.
But there's even more remote options. So SnapBridge has been around for a while. More improvements on that. And the one thing I do want to make sure everyone realizes is also the way we update firmware can also be done through the app now.
That's right. So our SnapBridge app, available for Android and iOS, has been upgraded, constantly upgraded. People can now adjust their exposure, etc., remote control the camera, download RAW files to it now, download movie files to it now. The big update with these cameras is that now you'll be able to upgrade your firmware through the app. So you could be out in the field instead of having to get a memory card reader, plug into a computer, download it onto the card, put it into here. You literally have the app. The app will transmit the firmware file onto the memory card in your camera, and that saves you time. It saves you effort from getting the card reader, and you can do it literally on the spot. And
it's also on that card, which means if you have multiple bodies, you just travel the card across your bodies.
That's right. And not only that, but it should, because if your app is synchronized, it'll know what you have already in the camera in terms of firmware, so it will indicate when you need a firmware update.
Yeah, that's a big deal too. So I think a lot of people don't stay up on the firmware update, and that could, they could have issues with compatibility with something that's new in the market that they don't know about or whatever.
Yeah, several months after we announced it, I would walk into some stores or some people, and they didn't have IAF. Because that was a feature that we announced with, I think, firmware update 2.0, and they were still running with the original one. They're losing out on functionality, and we want to make sure that they're getting the best experience all the time.
I mean, even the Z6 was able to take CF Express. It was XQD when it debuted.
Right, yeah, that was another important upgrade. Yeah.
I mean, these are huge. This isn't just like, oh, they changed the menu setting or like there's an interface difference. Like, these are actual features, options, versatility, getting more out of what you've already paid for. That's like...
Yeah, and among other things, the SnapBridge app also allows you to be more social media ready. If you're out in the field and you can't wait to get home in order to upload something to your Instagram account, now you can actually do edits in camera. We have 20 different picture controls that you can apply in after the fact or as you're shooting. Send that to your phone in high res if you want and broadcast it to your social media. So it's a really you used this word before, a multimedia powerhouse when talking about the Z5. I think with the Z6 and Z7 too, they're both multimedia powerhouses.
Yeah, no, I think you've looked at every angle of content creation and then the class of the content creation that someone might need one way or another. Maybe you need more res for the detail, whatever. But video, Nikon is just screaming for the last 2 years with the video. The one thing that I think people don't realize also is you kind of have a wireless tethering system out there.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for like
it is built right into the camera out of the box when you take it. No extra adapter, no extra software that you have to pay for. It's a simple wireless setup utility, and you could literally be wirelessly tethering to your laptop or desktop, provided it has Wi-Fi in it, and send your RAW files and JPEG files right to a folder on your desktop.
And what about to like an iPad or something, mobile tablet?
Then you would use the SnapBridge app for that. Yeah, so we got you covered whether you're using desktop or whether you're using smart device. We got you covered.
Insane. Is there anything we didn't touch on here? Because it's like I feel like there was so much.
Well, you know, we didn't have you last time when we had the launches for the 50 and the 14 to 24. But I mean, this whole system, I just want to drive home that we're rounding out in high-end ways. So we have these cameras and lenses now that all work together. It's kind of the perfect storm. You know, we're coming into the second generation of these cameras. We're addressing a lot of the hardware upgrades that people want with these cameras. We're giving them lenses that they've asked for and that our mount has really promised. We've promised the potential of 1.2 apertures. We have a 0.95, but more importantly, the 2.8 Trinity has been fulfilled now. And now people, like you said, can pick up and look at our system and say, from a professional standpoint, does it give me everything that I need? Wide, mid-range telephoto, super telephoto with teleconverters, all in a professional format without having the need to, you know, go to adapters. We can still use the FTZ adapters for specialty lenses, macro, perspective control, and things like that. But you now can stay native within the system, get the most out of the Z mount, and get overwhelming performance edge to edge and shot wide open. That's something that our DSLRs can't do because of the dimensions of the mount. So that's really kind of the overwhelming reason that you would look at the Z system is that mount, that diameter and that short flange distance.
Well, there's also something we said for native lenses, especially with the Z system. So one thing I realized is I have a ton of legacy glass because I've shot Nikon for a long time, right? But when that glass was around, video wasn't taken into account. There's lens breathing was something that happens. So lower cost lenses often have like noise to them and stuff like that. But every Z mount lens I put on a camera, I see very minimal, if zero, lens breathing as it's focusing. I hear nothing. They're fast. The up close focus on the kit lenses alone is ridiculous. And I don't think a lot of that's being talked about enough. And also, you keep talking about how this system's like growing. You guys need to talk about it more. Like what would you say? Like we had like a one release a month so far, and
that's
like
right.
if you look at what's out there, media-wise, blog-wise, vloggers, influencers, you don't see that there's a release every month.
Well, you know, it's rapid expansion, and that's why this is a big splash today. It's very exciting because if we look back on the past 24 months, we've just been head down trying to get this out to the community, and now it's here. So we're really making a big splash today, and we have a big story to tell because now we have this whole lineup of lenses. And as you said, every single production that we came out with is a serious production. The majority of our lenses are actually S-line lenses, which would be equivalent of the Gold Ring series on the F-mount. So every single lens, like you said, minimal focus breathing, minimal noise for video because we're using these fly-by-wire AF motors, even the technology that goes into some of our things like the 50mm 1.2, that is a very symmetrical autofocusing system. So I could go on and on, but you got to really dive. It's going to be fresh because people can dive into this system and get excited about every single release that we've come out with because they are really serious productions.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. I think that so much has happened in 2 years. It just feels like it's a long stretch, but it's like a blink in a century-old brand as Nikon.
And more to come, as we've promised. Over the next 12 months, we're going to be coming out with 8 more lenses, and that's all we can tell you about right now. You can actually check them out on our website. We actually have a roadmap already on there. Yeah,
they literally show me a picture of a bunch of silhouettes. They won't show me anything that's coming, so it's been super fun just teasing what's coming out. But with what the track record has been, I'm not too worried about anything. I'm actually pretty excited to see what's going to happen, especially with the next evolution of the Z series. Mark, thanks so much for hanging out with me and talking about this. All right, that's going to do for me. So if you guys have any questions about the Z6 II or the Z7 II or the Trinity lens or anything that we've talked about, hit me with a comment down below. I'll try to respond to the best I can. Maybe even get Mark in there to talk about it. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and the bell for more videos like this, and I will see you guys next time. Later.